If you know me, you know that my favorite book of the New Testament is the book of Matthew. The reason for that is, and I want you to imagine for a moment, that there's someone that walks into your town, ancient times, kings, queens, that kind of deal. Someone walks into town and they say, "Hey, I'm supposed to be the new king around here, so let's go ahead and do this. Go ahead and install me as king. We'll have the inauguration here soon." Well, if that person came to you and said that, you'd probably would have some sort of questions, maybe some things that you would like to ask, like, okay, what makes you king? Let's talk about your lineage. Let's talk about your bloodline. Let's talk about all those kind of things. And if you look in the book of Matthew, this Jesus character comes onto the scene, if you will, and he declares himself king. And we have his birth, his lineage, all of these kind of things, his resume, all of these amazing things that he does, amazing miracles, teachings. So he's not only telling people that he's king, but he's also laying out the kingdom ethic, if you will. And he's talking about what this kingdom is going to look like when he is finally inaugurated as king. So the book of Matthew is just awesome. Well, in Matthew chapter 22, there's this interesting story. At this point, Jesus has his disciples. He's going around, he's doing amazing things. And I use the word amazing a lot, I'm sorry. But he's doing these things that are showing people who he truly is and what kind of power he truly has. And the religious leaders hate that because they're stealing power from him, they're stealing influence, they're stealing the limelight. And in fact, it's this younger guy, 30 years old, let's say, and he's showing authority of someone twice his age. So, Matthew chapter 22, there's this story that shows us that the religious leaders tried to catch Jesus in a trap. You see, these particular religious leaders, they not only followed God, not only did they want to make everyone live a holy life and do the sacrifices and all of those things that were necessary to be a good Jew, to be a good religious person, but they also had one foot in pagan ideology and one foot in the fact that if they kept good in the eyes of the government, if they pleased them, then let's just face it, they get nice homes, nice accommodations, and they could live their lives comfortably as religious people. So the religious leaders came to Jesus and they said, and they wanted to catch him in a trap. And they showed him a coin, and this coin had Caesar on it. And maybe you know this story already, but they said, okay, Jesus, because they know that a lot of these Jewish people that he was ministering to had this idea that they shouldn't have to pay taxes because, well, they were kind of a different segmented population and they shouldn't have to. So there were a lot of revolts squashed, and all of those kind of things. Well, they came to Jesus and they showed him a coin, and on that coin, Caesar was engraved on it. So obviously, they knew who the ruler was of that particular empire. And they said, okay, Jesus, I want you to say this in front of all of your followers. Is it good to pay taxes? Tell us right now. Is it good to pay taxes to Caesar? You see, if he were to say yes to that, then the religious people that were following him would get up and walk away, a big revolt, protest, and all of those kind of things. Oh, this is not the guy. This is not the Messiah. This mustn't be him because he disagrees with us. Well, and if he were to say no, then they've caught him in the trap. And the religious leaders, the government, they could crucify him right then and there because he was a revolutionary. Let's squelch that, right? Jesus looks at these people and say, why are you trying to catch me in a trap? So he knew what they were doing. But he said this very important phrase that I think we need to really break down for a moment. He said this: give to Caesar what is Caesar's, and give to God what is God's. You see, on one side, that satisfied the government, right? Because if you think about it, what is Caesar's? The currency. Look at the face. Look at what's engraved. Look at who the reflection is on this particular piece of currency. The person who is engraved on that image, or the image that is engraved, would have the authority in that area. So if you're talking about money, sure, it's Caesar. Give him all the money that he requires. In fact, this is his. This is his, this coin. We owe it to him, right? But that's an interesting part of it. And that definitely confirms the fact that Jesus is okay with paying taxes in this particular context. But look at the next phrase. He said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's." Look at the engraved image. Look at the reflection here. Look at what is on this coin. Caesar, okay, give it to Caesar's. But the next part, he says, "Give to God what is God's." And that, my friends, is an amazing teaching that he just gave. He packed everything into that one little phrase. Because if you think about it, let's ask ourselves the question, what is Caesar's? Currency, all of these things that we see around us, sure. But what is God's? And the answer to that question is, if Caesar has his face engraved, his image engraved on this currency, then what does God have his image engraved on? The answer to that is us. You see, if you ask the question, what is God's? Because in that particular phrase, that's what is implied. Give to God what is God's. Then the question has to come, what is God's? We've already figured that out about Caesar. Now, what is God's? God wants you. God wants all of you. And God wants to give you a fruitful and productive life because his image is engraved on you. So what is God's? Well, you could say the generic Sunday school answer, everything's God's. But more importantly, in this context, you are. So sure, give the money to Caesar. But in this particular story, God wants all of you. And today I want to ask you the question, are you willing to give yourself to him? Does it make sense for you to start struggling with that question? Are there things in your life that you keep off limits to him? You say, God, you can have all of me except this. A, B, C, and D, but not E. The question is, what kind of life do you want to live? If you are a Christ follower today, are you just a hobby Christ follower? Or are you giving all of yourself? It's an important question. Well, I hope you learned something today. Love you all.